Superman 2025 isn't the best superhero movie from James Gunn. In fact, I'd probably put all the Guardian of the Galaxy movies above it, but even so, I thought it was still a solid movie, and an improvement from the Snyderverse in terms from a character standpoint. There are a lot of positives for this movie, but yeah, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a handful of issues to come from Superman 2025. So why don't we go ahead and go through those. So the Snyderverse is probably dead at this point, and now we have James Gunn kind of taking control of a new cinematic universe with DC. I mean, Snyder did a couple things that were good, and overall I don't hate Man of Steel. It is a very entertaining movie. Henry Cavill definitely looks the part, the fight scenes are top tier, and it's got some good acting. But in the Snyderverse, the character Superman doesn't act like how Superman should act. We saw him destroy a truck because some asshole in a bar tried to pick a fight with him. He destroyed property indirectly, killing God knows how many, and tortured his enemies during combat because this Superman is badass and he don't give a frick. I think the main reason I prefer Superman 2025 is that I feel like they nailed Superman's character much better. The best part about this newer Superman is how empathetic the character is towards others. He actually shows care for his surroundings, and we see him save people in the middle of the fights, while Snyder was more concerned about how Superman should be fighting his enemies as opposed to actually saving people. I will say though, it did get a little over the top with the new Superman, when he even saved a fucking squirrel at one point, but I'd rather that than him carelessly, indirectly killing people. The Dragon Ball Z fights do look cool, but I'm not taking those at the expense of Superman looking less like a hero. Another critique I have for 2025 Superman is that he is way too vulnerable at some points, and I don't mean in the sense of him crying or being helpless during his lowest point in the film, but my god, I feel like James Gunn really floundered when it came to finding a balance between Superman being imposing and being vulnerable. He gets his ass beat a lot, and I mean a lot in this film. Hell, our first introduction to Superman is him all beaten and bloody. For half the movie, he looked like Ian Joma at the end of Creator Clash 2. To be fair though, this is the first James Gunn Superman movie. This issue can be fixed if we see Superman actually kick ass in later films, showing immense progress and development. I can be fair to James Gunn and just say, hey, this is a younger Superman, and he's still learning. Overall, I did like this version of him though. There wasn't really too much time given to each individual character, and to be fair, it's one movie, not a TV show. The only one who stood out to me, and this is everyone's pick as well, is Mr. Terrific. And my only exposure to this character is from the Justice League cartoon, and he is way better in this movie. And Guy Gardner was also enjoyable, and I liked Millie Alcock's version of Supergirl, even though she was only in the movie for like a minute. It's a brief scene, but James Gunn did a good job showing the relationship between Superman and Supergirl. Besides that handful of characters, I would say the other side characters are just passable. There wasn't really a bad character in this movie, but not all of them really stood out. Lois Lane, for example, peaked when she had that interview with Clark at the beginning of the movie, but in terms of personality after that, she's kind of dull. At least Lois actually does shit in the story, from rescuing Superman with Mr. Terrific and exposing Lex Luthor through the press, as opposed to just needing to be rescued like in the animated show. Speaking of Lex Luthor, I'm sorry, but I did not care for Nicholas Holt's portrayal. Maybe it's because I was spoiled by Clancy Brown's version, but Holt's Lex Luthor just kind of reminds me of a slightly more mature and less energetic version of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. Now granted, this Lex Luthor is written way better than the Snyder version. I do love seeing in detail how Lex fights Superman, having names for all these different counters, displaying that he has extensively studied Superman, which also exposes his obsession with him. I do appreciate Superman 2025 skipping the origin story because everyone at this point has prior knowledge over who Superman is. Of course, the trade-off for that is some very annoying exposition. I think the worst example of this is when Lex Luthor and his henchmen both explain to each other what their motives are, even though they should both know this information already. Kind of obnoxious, but nothing drastic. However, the ending where Superman was going off on Lex about being human was a little too preachy for me. It's the same issue I had with the Barbie movie. You have all these amazing sets for great visual storytelling, and yet you resort to just shouting the message to the audience. I swear at one point I thought Clark was going to say something along the lines of, "I may be super, but I'm also a man."
Say that again?
Going back to the plot, even with a 2-hour runtime, it still felt too fast-paced, and if I'm being honest here, even with the constant flashbacks from Man of Steel, I still feel like it was telling a more cohesive story. Better written? No, but the plot in Man of Steel surprisingly feels smoother. How Superman 2025 makes up for that is by having a satisfying conclusion, and many more high moments than lows compared to Man of Steel. A longer runtime to allow the audience to get to know the characters better, instead of introducing them with exposition and choppy screen time, would have done wonders for the overall movie. Coming into Superman 2025, sitting in the movie theater chair, I was preparing myself for the James Gunn MCU humor that was about to slap me in the face. And there are times when his humor in movies well overstays its welcome, because something James Gunn is notorious for is having comedy interrupt serious scenes. I mean, this Superman movie definitely had a goofier tone compared to other Superman movies. There were a couple moments where it felt like this is more of a Guardians of the Galaxy movie rather than a Superman movie. For example, there is a scene where Lex Luthor has a legion of monkeys that write propaganda about Superman online, which to me definitely felt more like Guardians of the Galaxy rather than Superman, but it was just way over the top and too stupid for me. Oh, I forgot. There's actually another scene that I felt like the comedy was pretty out of place. As I said before, there's an intriguing scene with Lois Lane interviewing Superman. The interview slowly turns into a debate, and we get two understandable point of views for how Superman should conduct himself. It's a great scene that builds character for both Lois and Clark. However, towards the end of this heated debate, we get Lois Lane listing off insults people say about Superman online, and Lois brings up one nickname, Super Shit, to Clark, and our great pal Superman responds by saying, "Super Shit? Come on, you know that one especially irritates me." Oh, he doesn't say that line sarcastically, mind you. He actually gets mad by someone calling him super shit. I mean, you can take this as Superman still maturing, but that was way too childish and stupid. It's obvious James Gunn wanted people to laugh at that outburst, and I not only thought it was unfunny, but it interrupted what is supposed to be an intense scene, which is, nothing new to James Gunn. You might as well had Clark punch his chest like a gorilla after Lois tells him, "People call you Super Poo-Poo Man. How do you respond?" What's even more childish is that this is the comment that makes Superman want to stop the interview, and not Lois questioning Clark on whether he did the right thing to save people's lives. Call him Poo-Poo Man and he'll fly away in tears. I think everyone looks great, except for Hot Girl. This looks like shit. If James Gunn is truly creating his own universe, then this was a strong start. Of course, as I said, there were a couple of hiccups, but the key thing that Superman 2025 did is correctly adapt the character of Superman. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how a cinematic universe would work, since the last DC movie from James Gunn included characters from the Snyderverse, and confusingly, there is even a Peacemaker cameo. Okay, if these movies are connected and laying the foundation for a cinematic universe, then I'm definitely excited to see more. 3.5 out of 5.